Resurrection is as common as chocolate in Belgium. Resurrection is as sobering as a nappy hair left behind on a white sheet, reminding you that somebody does indeed have the power to make you sweat the nasty off of your attitude. I like all the ways I am constantly reborn. I've just got issues with the tedium and redundancy of the methods in which I've chosen to expire. I have seen the bottom of this well far too often. It's time to move on and die of something else. Oh, look at that. Joy has wrapped itself around my ankle. This is the ritual of my morning awakening, when I'm lucky.
John W. Love Jr. is a surreal apparition of a being who creates multi-sensory experiences that invite participants into a world of yes. He is a joy, he is a mystic, he is an interdisciplinary literary and performance artist. His work is as, quote, deliciously complex, circuitous, textual, and contextual as his own nappy hair, end quote. He tells stories that are earthen and fantastical. His installations delight and confound. He smears boundaries because, quote, definitions all fit like a fat man in a toddler's big girl dress, end quote. John is a poet, an actor, a dancer, a sculptor, a director, and a teller of tales. In his stories, characters burn blue. He is a recipient of the Arts Sciences McColl Award in recognition of artistic excellence and a Rasmuson Foundation Individual Artist residency. He is a North Carolina Artist Council and Guggenheim Foundation Fellow. His work has brought him to places around the world. His insights are flavors in the mind. I'm Mark Paris, and this is On Life and Meaning. John, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here.
It's great to have you. John, you've been described in many ways as an interdisciplinary literary and performance artist, as a love warrior monk and mischievous thinker, as an actor, writer, image maker, and cultural provocateur, and as an ageless and ancient mystic. How do you think of yourself?
To ask someone as specific as I am to describe themselves is always kind of interesting thing. There's something about it that is beautifully absurd and wonderfully ridiculous. Because I'm acutely aware of the fact that I'm many, many things, and I'm so many things. And I do have a thing about accuracy and telling the truth, but I also know that the truth, that there's a surreality about being that is kind of much more true than sort of these hard lines of demarcation about who we are and what that means and where we came from and all of those things and how that translates into who we really, really are.
And yet these are words that you chose for yourself.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a writer. I mean, that's part of what I do. And I tell fantastical stories that are inspired by my peculiar take on life and existence and what I see. So it would be fitting that my perspective of myself is a bit like that too.
So part of what you describe is your own fantastical version of yourself.
I guess. Somebody might call it fantastical. Yeah.
How do you describe your art?
Well, I mean, if we're going to be kind of technical, if we're going to go into the categories of my art, literally, I'm an interdisciplinary artist. And that, for me, that includes sculpture, performance, video, sound, installation, I have a really, really strong meditative practice of my own, and I'm highly intuitive and empathic. And so that becomes a part of my work as well. My meditative work that I do with other people, my intuitive work that I do with other people is a big part of my art social practice. A wonderful person that I know, Kirian Grossman. Kirian once described meditations with me as saying, doing a guided meditation with John W. Love Jr. is not so much of a guided meditation as it feels like your own personal performance art piece. And that's kind of true. Then in terms of what am I doing in the work, that's kind of a whole other story.
Well, let's explore that story. You've written that you, quote, rescue narrative, end quote. What do you mean by that?
The way that I interact with life, existence, phenomena, I don't apply narrative onto things. I don't superimpose narrative onto things. But I look at things, I see things, I feel things, I smell things, I taste things, I sense things. It is as if those things speak to me in some very unique ways. And so there's always a narrative. There's always some sort of story.
Can you share how the discovery and rescue of narrative is expressed for those who are unfamiliar with the art that you create?
All right. Well, I've always written. I've always been a writer, even as a kid. And my most intense, hardcore training as an artist was as an actor and as a performer. I trained very seriously as an actor. I trained very seriously as a singer. I trained very seriously as a dancer. And so with that in my world, and I was very, very ensconced in the legitimate theater, a lovely, wonderful career in the legitimate theater. And there was a time when this thing that I had pretty much trained for all of my life no longer had the same juice for me. And so my approach to things is I have a pretty deep, rich, broad skill set in the things that I'm really, really good at.
Which are?
Which are, I can write like a motherfucker. And I can act my ass off. I know how to tell story. I am highly conceptual. And I know how to translate concept and desire and imagery and vision to people.
John, I want to explore some of your more recent signature performance and installation works. The first is Fecund. How would you describe it?
In my first residency at the McColl Center for Visual Art, I was an early resident there. My first residency was in 2001. And I respond to things, I respond to materials, I respond to life. I had written all of this work, and I was referencing salt a lot. Salt is a big thing in my work. And somebody said, why salt? And I said, because of all the things it does. It heals, it cures, it preserves, it destroys. Too much of it will kill you. Not enough of it will kill you. It proliferates itself. Salt of the earth, salt in the wound. It's ubiquitous. And it's beautiful. And it's fascinating to me. And so I began to do all of these experiments with salt, figuring out ways to make sheets of salt, using polymer and salt, and then making these sheets of salt. And then I began to sew some of these sheets of salt together. And then I went, ooh, the salt coat. And I was like, who wears a salt coat? And then I was off and rolling in this character of mine that wears a salt coat. And then I was working with lots of other natural things, because I have a thing about life and what it means to be alive. Well, it's all life, even in death, because we don't live in an existence that is static. It is perpetually moving, perpetually changing, perpetually expanding, even in death. Things break down. They continue to go. They return to the source in one way or another. And so I was exploring all of that with all of these natural things. So I was salt encrusting things, but then I was paprika and turmeric encrusting things. And then I was making structures out of deep, rich, dark earth and these kinds of herbs. And as I'm playing in all of this, because there's a lot of the alchemist, the wizard, all of that in me. Characters and narrative and things are happening in my brain. And so it's this conversation with all of these parts of myself and with the materials and with the work and with all of that.
There are characters that you have created that live in your art. Mm-hmm. I'd like to name a few of them and ask you to tell me about these characters in a sentence or two.
All right.
Nequa, or She Who Would Be King.
Nequa is a reluctant, I describe her as a reluctant, juicy-faced 14-year-old priestess. Her twin brother is Black Lily Billy, and their mother is Nema, the entity who was charged with naming the gates of hell.
Roscoe, the eggplant Takemoto.
Roscoe, the eggplant Takemoto, is the blackest sensei in existence. It is eventually revealed, that he is actually the uncle of Nequa and Black Lily Billy. And so he has his own special brand of magical powers.
Karen, the white trash trailer park heroine.
I love Karen. I adore Karen. Karen is a brilliantly complex character of mine. And I say that because there's a lot going on with her. And one of the things that people don't know about Karen, because they haven't seen the other part of her, is that she's schizophrenic. And so these lives that she lives, that's just part of the story.
The perpetually pregnant man.
Well, the perpetually pregnant man is the character that I've discovered after many, many, many years, is actually the entity who is narrating all of my work. He is my narrative voice. And everything comes through the perpetually pregnant man. So in the world of fecund, for example, or fecundity, but I say fecund, in the world of fecund, in this surreal world of fecund, which is a world of yes, I call everything in that world the fecund. The characters are the fecund. The artifacts are the fecund. And all of those entities, all of those characters have selected the perpetually pregnant man as the being through which their stories are told. The perpetually pregnant man has a dubious relationship with being perpetually pregnant. Because not only is he perpetually pregnant with his own thoughts and stuff, he's sort of taken over by these other entities. And as soon as he thinks he's done, he looks behind him and there's a whole queue of those motherfuckers waiting saying, it's my turn. Because for years, people would say, they would assume that I, the John W. Love Jr. that they knew or thought they knew, was the narrative voice of this work. I always knew it wasn't me. But after many, many years, it came to me that it was the perpetually pregnant man. And the perpetually pregnant man is the owner of the salt coat, just to bring it all around.
All of these characters exist in this landscape that you referred to as the world of yes. What is the world of yes, and what does that mean to you?
I came to yes in contemplation of what is it that makes meeting life worthwhile. And it really happened during a meditative moment. One of the things about my meditations, I would hear the phrase, sit in a self-supporting upright position and assume the correct posture and breathe or whatever. And I always said the correct posture cannot just be physical. And once again, in rolling that question around, it came to me, the correct posture is a posture of joy. That's the correct posture. And joy leads to yes. Someone asked me one time, they said, John, you're all about yes. Yes, 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 yes. Well, is there a time when no is appropriate? And I said, absolutely. No is appropriate when it is in service of your yes. And I look at it this way. Yes is an open door, an open window. Yes is infinite. No creates a barrier, a boundary. It is finite. And because I am all about living in the possibility and in the fascination, there's more places to go with yes.
What is your response to the idea that the person that we encounter when we meet you could very well be a character that you have written?
I can't really do anything about that. I have great concern about my intent in terms of when I encounter people, or how I deal with people, or how I roll with people. For as seemingly unabashed, crazy, sharp-tongued as I can be, I am an incredibly compassionate person. And it's a part of my empathic gifts. I'm not a very sympathetic person, but I'm a very empathetic person. And so being who I am, I learned a long time ago, I'm really not responsible for how people perceive me. But I am responsible for what I share with them.
How do you think people perceive you?
Oh God, that varies. One of my friends said, oh John, everyone loves you. I was like, bitch, no they don't. Everybody don't love me.
Well, that leads to my next question, John. When you are out and about,
yeah,
you have a certain magnetism. Everyone seems to know you and people are attracted to you. Why do you think that is?
Once again, I once said to a friend of mine, and I said, you know what? I accept the love. I take the love. I receive the love. I'm not poo-pooing the love. And I said, but I'm not sure that it's really that everyone loves me. I said, but I do think that a lot of people love the way that I make them feel. And that's what they respond to. Because I truly see people as these magnificent, glorious, regal beings. And I treat people that way.
As an artist and as someone who produces art for the world to encounter and engage with, does the response of others matter to you?
The response of others has absolutely no bearing on what I do, what I create, what I present. I am not second guessing myself or an audience. What I do is I create what I believe and what is really rich and what is a gem for me. And then I dare to share it. And so, because I do that and because that is my process, by the time I share it, I really don't need anyone to love it or hate it.
I think of you and your art as very flirtatious. How much of your art is flirtation and how much is consummation?
Oh, consummation? Clarify for me what you mean by consummation.
Let your mind go where it may.
Flirtation, oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Sexy, sensual. See, as human beings, we've got these kind of varying things about sensuality, sex, the body. Well, to me, it's all human, it's all divine. I believe that every relationship is a love relationship. It's just love manifested and expressed in many, many different ways. And so my way of engaging with life, with people, is a very sensual way. And so that comes out in the work.
You've won many prestigious awards and fellowships, including most recently the Guggenheim Fellowship. What are the rewards and constraints for you that come with these recognitions?
When I received the Arts and Science Council's McColl Award, which was a $25,000 award, which was about creating new work. And it was the first year that the Arts and Science Council opened that award up to individual artists applying for it, because before only only organizations could apply. Upon receiving that award, at that time it was the largest single award that I had ever received. And a friend of mine who's an art collector and a great supporter of artists said to me, she said, "You should be really proud of yourself because all of the big organizations were going for this and you got it." And I said, I don't really look at competition in that sense. I don't even consider the competitive spirit in that way. I said, but what I'm really proud of is that every single solitary thing about this, about my application, about my process, about my work, is on my terms. I have complete autonomy. I presented an idea which many would say may be my most dangerous idea. So doing that and not half-stepping on how I show up is very, very empowering. So what I do is that I always remember that. When I apply for something, my big thing is, I do not do an application unless I am richly in a state of joy and excitement. I do not do an application unless I have deep roots in the yummy of what I'm applying for. And then I also build in lots of leeway for change. So I refuse to be beholden to the false notion that you can predict artistry. You can have great intentions, but you can't predict the creative process. And then I also refuse to be beholden to the part of me that is the perpetual and perennial good boy, that is eager to please in that way and has great integrity and wants to do exactly what it is that I said that I do, because that's not really the way that it works.
John, let's talk about art. How do you define what is art?
The reality for me is that the art really isn't the thing. The art is actually the energy, the vibration, the movement, the vibrancy, the vitality that animates the thing, that has enabled the thing to come into being. To me, that's really the art. The thing itself, whether we're talking about the sculpture, the painting, the audio piece, the performance, is merely a tick mark in a larger journey.
Let me run an idea by you.
Okay.
What makes anything art is that it is powerful, that it is laden with certain animating powers. Something is art if it has the power to bestow power on others. Portraits, statues, photographs. Something is art if it is an act of immortality, if it outlasts us and gives transitory life significance. Something is art if it has the power to change beliefs. It invites us into new insights and understanding. Something is art if it has the power to shock, to challenge our sensibilities. Something is art if it has the power to touch our emotions and evoke sentiment and feelings. Something is art if it is social commentary that has the power to shift human relations. Something is art if it has the power to transform the ordinary, elevating the found object into an object of interest and admiration. In light of this view of art as something that has animating power, what power do you see in your own art?
I asked myself recently, love, what are you really doing? What are you really doing? What's kind of really going on with this work? I create a space for people to land because I create a space for me to land, and then I share that space. It has been said by others that their experience of my work is that it is transformative, as in people go on a journey, and oftentimes it's an unexpected journey.
What work of art by other artists move you?
Move me. Meryl Streep, I call her the heavyweight. She moves me. Even when she has a misstep, even when it ain't quite right, she moves me. Viola Davis. I think back to the first time I saw the early work of Bill T. Jones, dancer, choreographer Bill T. Jones. I was moved. This convergence of immense talent, body, life, heart, movement, all of that. My friend and colleague, Renee Stout, visual artist, her work moves me. There's so much. The films of Peter Greenaway move me. Bjork moves me.
Is there a trait you think great artists have in common?
There's something at the convergence of intention, gorgeous and beautiful obsession, and an inability to say no to the yearning and the desire to express.
John, I often ask a guest to describe themselves as a young person. Who were you when you were young?
When I was young, I was a surreal little sprite of a being, hell-bent and determined to not only discover himself, but to define himself.
Who were you in high school?
In high school, it's interesting. I was very popular in high school. My junior year, I was co-president of the student body. My senior year, I was president of the senior class. I was in every honor society. A lot of people knew me, all of that kind of stuff. But the reality of me in high school was that I was actually quite stealth in terms of there was the kind of public persona me that people knew, and it was quite real. But then there was kind of the other interior part of me that informed it all, that a lot of people didn't know, that a lot of people didn't necessarily engage with on a certain level.
And who was that person?
That person was another version of that little boy, and that person was a different version of what it is that people see more of me right now.
Would the 16-year-old John Love recognize the John Love you are today?
Absolutely. But the 16-year-old John Love would be fascinated with the John Love that I am today, based purely on the notion that the 16-year-old John Love would say, "What? That's the way that happened? It happened like that?"
What do you think would have surprised him?
I just didn't know that I would actually become this kind of mystical being that I've always wanted to be. I just didn't know that. I also always knew that that mine was a slow burn, that it wouldn't happen quick and fast for me.
You wrote a poem several years ago, and I'd love to hear it in your own voice, and it's called Early Morning Ritual.
Wow. Okay. It's been a minute since I've looked at early morning ritual. Every morning when I awake, all I can taste is the decay, hopelessness. A post-nocturnal inventory of my psyche reveals that fear has cut me so deeply I've fallen into myself. Slippery and stinging like hands raked over black ice, the walls of this fissure, this well, are shellacked with a patina of despair. And for the briefest of moments, I drown. Just like I did in that hotel pool the summer before 7th grade. Normally, I would tell myself to breathe, but I can't. So I just take a little sip of death and move on to the next thing. Resurrection is as common as chocolate in Belgium. Resurrection is as sobering as a nappy hair left behind on a white sheet, reminding you that somebody does indeed have the power to make you sweat the nasty off of your attitude. I like all the ways I am constantly reborn. I've just got issues with the tedium and redundancy of the methods in which I've chosen to expire. I have seen the bottom of this well far too often. It's time to move on and die of something else. Oh, look at that. Joy has wrapped itself around my ankle. This is the ritual of my morning awakening, when I'm lucky.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you a few questions that you are very familiar with, as these are questions that you crafted and posed to others in a column you entitled Provocative Questions to Interesting People.
Loves cues,
Loves
provocative
cues.
questions for interesting people.
These questions reveal as much about you as your guests. I'd like to pose these questions to you, at least a small sample of them, and ask you to answer quickly.
All right.
Is beauty necessary?
Absolutely.
Your mind is the temperature of?
The hottest part of the volcano, the wettest part of the lava.
You are the speed of?
Impulse.
You are the exact age as?
I am every age that I've always been.
What part of your body has been annoying you lately?
My gut.
What part of your body never embarrasses you?
My hands.
What has made you cry?
The immense sadness of the impoverished.
If you could eat a sculpture, what sculpture would it be?
For some reason, I would eat the feet of Rodin's thinker.
If you were to have an affair with a piece of literature, what would it be?
Oh, wow. If I were having an affair with a piece of literature. Toni Morrison's Tar Baby.
What three spices in the spice rack describe you?
Salt. Aleppo peppers. And raw cacao.
What is the sexiest tool in your arsenal?
my irreverence.
Salty, hot, crispy, or juicy?
Juicy.
That time that truth actually set you free, what was your hair doing, and what is the predominant smell that lingers in your memory?
My hair was revealing its first gray, and the predominant smell was an essential oil called black musk.
If your life were to spontaneously transform into a dream you have told no one about, what music would you hear?
Some mashup of Arvo Pärt with the funkiest, dopest house backbeat going on with some James Brown thrown in.
What is your oldest desire?
To be free.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
John W. Love Jr. is an interdisciplinary literary and performance artist. His work and installations include Fecund, Ooh Girl Anchorage, and Salt Daddy. He is a John Simon Guggenheim Fellow. And now, a personal word. When I hear John recite his poetry, I'm drawn back to my senior year in college, standing on stage, afraid. Late in the spring of my junior year, I was named student chairman of orientation, head of the O-Team. My job was to recruit and organize fellow students to be O-Team members who would greet incoming freshmen and help them move in, and to program several days of events on campus that would kick off the new school year. Leading orientation was a big deal. It was a paid staff position over the summer. I would be the face of the campus at events and in all printed literature. It was a prestigious position, as far as those things go, because of the spotlight and because administrators would see me, at least for a moment, as one of them. They saw in me the goods to work effectively with all the stakeholders on campus: deans, faculty, department heads, students, parents, and the community. I had earned my stripes for the position as president of the Honor Society and several other clubs and organizations on campus. I was perceived as a confident, well-spoken, high-achieving student, and a curious blend of a philosophical and pragmatic young man. All of which brings me to my moment on stage. It was late August 1984. The O-Team members, administrators, faculty, and staff had gathered for my opening remarks. There was energy and anticipation in the room as everyone was back on campus for the new year. I had my note cards in my hand, ready to climb the stairs to the stage, when I suddenly felt this overwhelming panic that I was uninteresting, that no one would like what I had to say, that everyone would find me a vast disappointment. I started to sweat. I walked on stage and looked out. Everything became a blur. The crowd was one amorphous, colorless blob. My voice became cottonmouth. I mixed up my cards. I don't know what I said. After a few moments, the next speaker came on stage and put his arm around my shoulder and smiled empathetically. I received polite applause. It was a disaster. I sat in my seat and wanted to hide. The wheels of orientation turned and the week went on successfully. I'm sure no one gave my remarks any further thought, other than me. I later received a handwritten note from the president of the college saying it was the best orientation he had seen, that everything ran perfectly, and that everyone was pleased. I went on to have a particularly strong senior year, went to law school, entered business and community work and education, and have led my life ever since. Since that day, 33 years ago, I have spoken to hundreds of audiences, but the memory of that moment is still with me every time I walk on stage. I still have an occasional panic, I still have my doubts that everything I do is uninteresting, that my personality and talents and skills are less than desired. John Love invites us into a world of yes. I think about living a life saying yes, even when all my nerves say no. This is Mark Paris, and you've been listening to On Life and Meaning. Thank you to my partners Andy Go, producer of the show, and to Chris Curriton, art and media director. This is how you can help. Please write a review on iTunes. It helps us grow our audience. Follow us on Facebook. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. And become a patron. We are on Patreon, a crowdsourcing platform that allows you to support what you value. Visit us also on our website, onlifeandmeaning.com. Thank you for listening.